Okay, so if we look at intermittent fasting and we look at the clock and we look at earlier later dinner, which is habit number 1 here, and that I know many of you have heard me say this a million times, but I'll say it again. Like the reason I start with earlier lighter dinner, because the way that I was taught, these habits, this dinacharya, or the daily habits of yogis, in my Ayurvedic training and in my yogic training, was that you start that day. So you start with dawn. But the problem to me was, like, if you start with dawn and you had a heavier dinner last night, it's not going to work. Like, none of the rest of the habits are going to work that day. And the other thing is, you know how, like, if you can always start tomorrow. Like, I feel like the Mexicans nail this with the term mañana. Like, oh, mañana, but tomorrow never comes, right? Tomorrow never comes, because if you eat a late dinner and you go to bed late, like tomorrow, you just screwed tomorrow. Like, let's be super clear. Like, you're going to wake up heavy and groggy. Emotionally, you're going to be in a negative thought pattern, meaning you're not going to like yourself as much. And that's how you want to start, like, the changes of the day. Forget about it. So we have to start today. The time is now, right? We have to start with, what does the rest of the day look like? And so by starting then, what we can see, this is my clock. And now to go back to Mark's questions with we'll say the body types. Now, another way in Western to say body type is we could say metabolic types. We were just having this conversation over in marketing, because my guy who runs Facebook ads, he was like, intermittent fasting is kind of a buzzword, but he's like, what's a more even mainstream translation to that? And I was like, metabolic types. If you pick up like GQ magazine, there's going to be a little column on the side about how to boost your metabolism, or what's your metabolic type. So what does this mean? It just means that, like, different people have different constitutions that we digest differently. And the way that I draw this is in terms of these, in terms of shapes. So we have Vata, Pitta, and Kapha types. So Vata, and then I'm just going to draw it in here, 2 and 6. These are the times. Okay, so we've got a few different things going on my little worksheet here. Okay, so for people that are lighter and they're more ectomorphic, Vata types tend to move quickly. Their dominating elements are air and ether. They're more like the sky. They're more like the wind. Whereas Kapha types are like the earth and water. They're heavy. Pitta types are like fire. So for a Vata type, they don't have a lot of digestive capacity. And so because of that, with intermittent fasting, or if we look at meal spacing or rhythmic eating, to me, those are all the same thing. A Vata type is going to actually do better with maybe like a 10-hour window. So like 8 a.m. even up to 6 p.m. This to me would be, we could just color code that more to Vata. And then for Pitta types, and I just want to link this to caffeine too. Vata types don't do that well with caffeine in general. So like Robert probably got to a point. Robert, you write in the chat, do you know your constitution? Yeah, Vata Pitta. Okay. So the problem with caffeine for Vata types is they actually need digestive fire. And because caffeine can put out digestive fire, Vata types can have a really hard time then eating at the same time every day, like having enough bile to digest the food. And so Vata types often will forget to eat. And then all of a sudden it's like 9 p.m. and they're like, oh my gosh, I haven't eaten in like 10 hours. And all I've had today was like a cup of coffee, or I had a latte, and they literally are not able to stabilize their nervous system because they're not stable in terms of eating in rhythm. So for Vata types, we're often like, just eat 3 times a day, eat at 8, eat around noon, and then maybe eat dinner around 5. And just that stability around digestion allows their nervous system to get much more calm, which enables them to actually sleep better, because they tend to have trouble with sleep, which enables them to then focus, because they often then have trouble with focus. So for Vata types, caffeine, it's like, be careful. Be careful. Now, Kapha types over here, these are the ones who are super stable and dense. So they're endomorphic. They're more of the hypo-metabolizers. And for them, their intermittent fasting clock can honestly, it's very fascinating to me how, and my husband is this way, he's Kapha. And so it was wild to see, like, once he got intermittent fasting, it was just like, oh, thank gosh, it was so much easier. He'll eat maybe around 11 and around 6. And so we'll just change colors here. So this would be Kapha types, just to be, I'll make them blue because it's more watery. They don't have strong digestion. Some Kapha types will just eat 1 meal a day. They'll just be like, you know what, forget the drama. 1 meal a day, somewhere between, digestion's the strongest between 10 and 2. So sometime even between 10 and 4 p.m. is pretty good for bile factor. And I'm just going to color this red because this is when digestion's strong. And what the Kapha types find is that, you know what, bulletproof coffee, or even just coffee, they don't even need the fat. Amazing. And they can have coffee in the morning and they can still sleep well because they can always sleep well. That's the benefit of being like a dense, slow, hypo metabolizer. One of the things that they find, the Kapha types find, is like they love not having the drama of food. Like just like the cooking, the cleanup, like all of that, like a lot of that drama just like drops away as they're going to like 1 to 2 meals a day. And they're already stable, right? Where Vata types are unstable. That's the nature, is they're unstable. It's their brilliance is that they're already unstable. There's a benefit to instability. Instability is like the transition between mind, body, and spirit is very, very fluid because there's just less stability. You get less stuck in the mind, more access to spirit. You get less stuck in the body, more access to spirit. So that's the benefit of Vata, but they have to then stabilize the body. Whereas Kapha types, they got stability down. They need to lighten everything up. And so they can choose instability. Coffee's awesome. Coffee's awesome for antioxidants, but it's also totally awesome for creating instability. Right? And then it goes from hypo more to hyper. So if that's the spectrum that you can afford to go on, I'm in full support. Okay, now Pitta types, and I'm going to make Pittas, I'm going to make them green. So Pitta types, these are the hyper metabolizers. So Pitta, again, they're going to have a hyper metabolism, meaning these are like the hangry people. These are the people who are like, if you feed me, like you're gonna experience rage or irritability, which on the inside feels like rage. So for Pitta people, they really burn, and they're super mental too. And because they're super mental, the brain requires, I can't remember what percentage of the body's energy, but it's a lot. I'm gonna guess it's like 40. And so if they don't eat a good lunch, it's really bad news, because then they'll actually be in like a irritable emotional response in the afternoon. So for Pitta types, I will say that it's called the 16-8 in intermittent fasting language. 16 is fast, 8 is feed. Now that can work great. Whereas for Vata types, I would say it's more of like a 14-10 is okay. Is good, until their body's like, you know what, we could go more towards the 16-8, but I'm never in a rush with the Vata. I'm like, just get rhythmic, just eat at the same time every day and get stable, and everything else will get better. Kapha types, it's more of like an 18-6. So fast is longer, feed is shorter. So how do Pittas go with the bulletproof coffee? This is where it gets interesting, because Pittas, everyone has like their own kryptonite. So remember, for Vatas, it's instability. For Kaphas, it's too much stability. And for Pittas, it's this, it's a chemical sensitivity. If you take, let's say, acid and you put it in water, just like acid rain in the Great Lakes, right? It pollutes the water, it spreads. So Pittas have the greatest sensitivity to stuff that's acidic. Now, coffee is acidic and oil is oily. It's like, yeah, duh, Kate, we know oil is oily, right? But because the oily nature, and pitta is oily by nature, it's another one of these attributes that it has. Vata's dry, Kapha's wet, pitta's oily. So when you add oil and acid to pitta, you can run into problems with inflammation. So bulletproof coffee, like who's it best for? That becomes a really interesting question.